Welcome back to our special show, Market Master, the Cartica View. I've been speaking with the CEO and co-founder of this large fund, Teresa Barger. Teresa, you gave us a lot about the mid-cap stocks that interest you in India. Now a little bit about the global context in which this is happening. The crude price rise. How do you look at it? Is that a secular trend that you are seeing, a rise in crude prices, and will that be a factor when you look at India?
So I've been wrong about this before, but when
everyone has,
when oil was starting to rise in the last month or so, what we saw is the Brent price going up, but the WTI price not going up. So that differential led us to believe that it could be temporary. Then in the last week, we've had Venezuela and Saudi Arabia news, and so people are concerned now about the supply side. WTI has also gone up, but it's still lagging. So I think you're still going to have the ability of the U.S. to produce, to fill a little bit of those voids, and then you could have OPEC getting a little cocky as well and saying, oh, well, we can break now our discipline on supply. So they can't, Russia can supply more, Saudi Arabia can supply more.
So you're not all that bullish on crude?
Not for the medium term. I'm not sure that we're going to see it go to 70 and stick, because this has been a sudden spike up. It might depend, though, on what happens in Saudi Arabia. And Venezuela, I think, is increasingly priced in.
Okay. All right. If crude is not that much of a bother, that's a relief for especially Indian investors. But what's your thought on the global equity rally itself? It's just not looked back, Trump notwithstanding. Do you see any red flags, or do you think that we are something like the 2003-2004 syndrome, where you can have good times for a few years?
We are in a really nice spot right now. So we've got global growth in the nowcast going at about 4.5%. We have slack in the globally coming down, so capacity utilization going up, but inflation not going up. So you've got this very benign scenario. And the 2017 rally was high quality because all over globally it was EPS that was really driving the rally. And the 50 top economies in the world are all growing. And partly is Brazil and Russia coming out of recessions. So that, I think, all those engines are doing very nicely. The concern, well, then in the U.S., we still have inflation nowhere near the 3% danger level for EMs. So that's good. And then when you've got EMs growing faster than DMs, which looks like is going to be true for the next 4 years or so, that's always been very positive for EM stock markets. So I would say, yeah, there are potential flags, but right now things are looking really quite benign.
So the global rally has legs?
I think it has legs. One could be concerned that the U.S. rally has gone on too long, but that's in terms of duration, not in terms of the absolute values. And so there could be some more to run in the U.S., which has typically been pretty good. And then the Fed's, 90% is going to hike in December, maybe more. And I think that's all priced in. And in past hiking cycles for the Fed, that's been good for the emerging markets. So I'm not terrified on that front. I mean, I think it's looking pretty good. And then if the reforms in various individual EMs continue to move forward, I think that's positive.
How will the pecking order remain? Will it remain DMs first and EMs following?
The real issue for EMs, the whole overall stock market, so we don't look at the EMs as a marching band. We look at it as separate concert pianists, right? And the concert pianist that is China is basically just, playing in the upper registers with one hand, which is the tech. And so there are 7 companies that have provided 50% of the juice for the emerging markets rally over the last year and a half. And those are the big tech companies and the 2 education companies of China, listed in the U.S., plus Samsung and the chip makers. So it's been, we now have the fangs of the emerging markets. Okay. Right. And so that's really hard to predict where that will go.
So, okay, then how would you look at the pecking order within emerging markets?
Well, I would say I would take out the China tech stocks as their own thing.
Yes.
And then the rest of China I would not put so high. Okay. But the tech stocks may still have legs because there's just momentum behind them. And then Singles Day is coming next Saturday, and that could be a big blowout, which is would be positive for those stocks in China. So those might continue to do well. Then we think that Brazil will probably do well despite the nervousness around elections. India, we think, will do well. Where's my pecking order?
All right, that's the order.
Russia, some other countries might do well.
Okay. Well, no, I just wanted to check where India would be in your pecking order.
It's somewhere in the top 3, 4, yeah.
Okay. How would you look at the macros in India itself? Are there any worries? Crude, according to you, is not going to, rise too much. But would there be any other macro worries in India?
Well, we're looking forward to the next thing we're looking forward to is the budget. When you look at, in the past, at the last budget of a prime minister's term, they've generally not blown out the fiscal ceiling, right? They've been quite conservative fiscally. We expect that of Modi's budget, but with money going to infrastructure and into the rural areas. So if that plays out, that would be, at least according to what we're guessing is going to happen. GDP growth disappointments, if there are too many more, that could actually really affect India, I think.
Will they be?
Could be. I think, doing these two shocking reforms, disruptive events of demonetization and GST, it could take quite a lot of time to work through the market. It looks like demonetization has worked through, but GST, we still don't know. I mean, they're still tweaking it, so we don't really even know what the rates are going to be.
But on balance, would you say that India has a chance of repeating the year that was in terms of equity returns?
I think it has a chance, yeah.
Okay. Well, on that positive note, Teresa Barger, pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for dropping by.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.